a monstrous attacker crashes into the town while terrified citizens scream and run through the chaos surrounding them, and S.H.I.E.L.D. watches calmly as the disaster unfolds nearby. A massive wall of stone crumbles above the frightened crowd, and officials scream for someone to raise a barrier before the wreckage crushes the panicking townspeople below them. S.H.I.E.L.D. summons an enormous barrier that expands instantly, shielding the entire town from the falling debris while stunned onlookers question how such power could exist. The crowd realizes the court magician created the shield, though some angrily insist S.H.I.E.L.D. should save people instead of wasting time helping a stray cat nearby. S.H.I.E.L.D. calmly explains that the barrier already protects everyone, insisting that strong defense naturally becomes the greatest offense against any threat the town faces. Later, nobles gather to celebrate S.H.I.E.L.D.'s engagement, showering him with congratulations while Elaine stands quietly among the crowd watching the festivities with a distant expression. Elaine smiles brightly among admiring nobles, then joyfully declares that she will now be known as S.H.I.E.L.D. Reyes, embracing her new engaged status happily. Soon after, soldiers surround S.H.I.E.L.D. in the palace hall, and an official announces his sudden banishment from the country under suspicion of plotting a coup. Shocked, S.H.I.E.L.D. insists this must be some horrible mistake, declaring firmly that he has never done anything resembling treason or conspiracy against the kingdom. The official presents supposed evidence discovered inside S.H.I.E.L.D.'s own house, leaving him confused and suddenly suspicious about Elaine's unexplained involvement in the situation. Elaine nervously admits she secretly entered his room one night out of worry, discovering something there that led directly to his abrupt banishment. Alone afterward, S.H.I.E.L.D. wonders why he was targeted, realizing his barrier magic had protected the kingdom from monsters and invasions for years. Surrounded by silent crowds, S.H.I.E.L.D. questions whether the king truly approved his banishment, calling the entire situation absurd and utterly ridiculous. Guards escort S.H.I.E.L.D. toward the exit while he jokingly asks for a severance payment, prompting laughter before he finally departs the palace. Riding away, S.H.I.E.L.D. reflects that he never engaged in politics, yet many women courted him, calling the entire ordeal an exhausting nuisance. Someone recalls that S.H.I.E.L.D. once promised to marry a stunning woman, teasing him even though his engagement had already been announced publicly. Despite living with dedication and effort, S.H.I.E.L.D. remembers people regarding him with quiet disdain, insisting he never did anything wrong. In a flashback, young S.H.I.E.L.D. practices his weak barrier magic tirelessly, unknowingly becoming the strongest barrier user in the entire country. Now traveling beyond the kingdom, S.H.I.E.L.D. notices the massive barrier still covering the land, realizing its magic was never meant to last forever. Inside the carriage, S.H.I.E.L.D. mutters that the barrier is nearing its limit, quietly wondering if he ever warned anyone about its true nature. Carrying only some money and a gold pocket watch, S.H.I.E.L.D. considers his options and decides heading south toward Minot offers the best chance. Settling into a tavern, S.H.I.E.L.D. happily digs into a hearty meal, admitting that being banished might actually not be so terrible after all. After paying for his food, S.H.I.E.L.D. thanks the innkeeper warmly and steps back outside, unaware that hooded figures have already begun tailing him closely. Noticing the strangers lurking nearby, S.H.I.E.L.D. calmly confronts them, stating he has clearly seen them following his movements for quite some time. Now one hooded assailant coldly declares he will die there, though S.H.I.E.L.D. only sighs, realizing they clearly have no intention of talking peacefully. The assassins launch a sudden barrage of slashing attacks, but S.H.I.E.L.D. instinctively recognizes their fighting stance from somewhere deep within his memory. S.H.I.E.L.D. questions whether they belong to the Knights group, then instantly raises his defensive barrier to block their incoming weapons completely. His barrier magic shatters the attacker's blade entirely, destroying their weapon and leaving them stunned by the surprising strength of his defense. The masked leader admits this outcome was expected, mockingly asking what else S.H.I.E.L.D. can possibly do against such overwhelming magical power. S.H.I.E.L.D. calmly notes the enemy's gravity magic, revealing that his own preparations were already complete before the confrontation ever began. Using reflection magic, S.H.I.E.L.D. redirects the gravity attack back at his foe, revealing he once rose through the royal court using only barrier magic. The moment he reflects magic, it permanently becomes his own, and he demands to know who exactly hired this mysterious assassin. The defeated attacker refuses to answer, so S.H.I.E.L.D. instead asks whether the person before him truly leads the knights themselves. S.H.I.E.L.D. explains someone clearly wants him dead permanently, ensuring he never regains his previous position of power within the kingdom. He warns proudly that his skill lies entirely in defense, meaning enemies like these will never manage to land a single hit. With the fight finished, S.H.I.E.L.D. turns toward the remaining hooded figures, calmly preparing to decide his very next course of action. Considering his escape route, S.H.I.E.L.D. worries that going south might let pursuers get ahead of him, since northern paths remain equally exposed. Standing before towering mountains, Shield reluctantly questions whether he must travel east, the direction he originally wanted least of all. Startled by something crawling near him, Shield frantically swears vengeance against the knight's captain while swatting wildly at an unseen bug. A massive caterpillar creature suddenly attacks him, leaving Shield screaming helplessly for help while completely covered in strange bug slime. Deep in the forest, Shield stumbles upon an enormous dragon towering above him, simply muttering that it appears to be just an ordinary dragon. The dragon suddenly speaks directly to him, questioning whether Shield is deliberately ignoring its voice while demanding to know if he understands human language. The creature introduces itself as Bahamut, the most powerful species alive, then declares its intention to devour Shield out of pure curiosity. Reacting instantly, Shield raises his barrier and activates physical reflection, preparing to redirect whatever attack Bahamut launches against him next. The dragon's assault bounces straight back toward itself, leaving Bahamut stunned and confused about how its own attack could possibly be repeated. Furious and disbelieving, Bahamut roars loudly, questioning how such an outcome is even possible against someone supposedly weaker than a dragon. Another barrier reflection sends Bahamut's attack flying backward again, striking the dragon with tremendous force and visibly staggering its massive body. Afterward, Shield examines the scattered wreckage nearby, quietly noting that the dragon's attack had clearly traveled a considerable distance away. Bahamut angrily wonders why simple barrier magic could possibly withstand something as advanced as its own overwhelming draconic power. Shield calmly explains that he has spent 10 full years honing nothing except barrier magic, leaving absolutely no weakness remaining. Preparing another defense, Shield activates barrier physical reflection again, insisting it is always safer having a barrier ready beforehand. Bahamut launches a devastating attack from above, sending a massive explosive blast crashing directly down towards Shield's position. Recognizing the beam resembles molten magma, Shield instantly reflects it back using barrier magic combined with magic reflection. The reflected attack strikes Bahamut directly, forcing an agonized roar from the dragon as pure energy erupts violently around them. Surveying the destruction, Shield realizes even the strongest dragon species proves surprisingly fragile, then decides to follow its trail. Following the wreckage, Shield concludes this destruction resembles a natural disaster rather than typical magic, calling the mess overwhelming. A horned young woman suddenly appears among the wreckage, calling out to Shield while complimenting his impressive display of strength. Startled, Shield demands to know her identity, and she casually reveals herself as Bahamut, shocking him completely. She explains she rarely takes human form, then casually asks Shield whether her current appearance seems acceptable to him. Realizing humans require clothing, Bahamut agrees without complaint. While Shield awkwardly asks her to please get properly dressed, Bahamut now wears light clothing and Shield questions why she still dresses so sparingly even out in the forest. Bahamut admits this marks the first time she couldn't devour a human, then decides Shield seems interesting enough to accompany. Shield invites her along since traveling alone grew boring, though he mentions needing a moment to prepare something first. Suddenly Bahamut lunges forward, baring her fangs while declaring that Shield has grown far too complacent and careless around her. Her fangs crack harmlessly against his invisible barrier, and Shield calmly explains that protection constantly surrounds him without exception. Walking together afterward, Bahamut complains about hunger while Shield sighs, both continuing onward toward whatever destination awaits them next. Shield walks through the forest, questioning his own sense of direction while Faye trails behind, quietly pointing out that he keeps drifting off course. Shield insists there is no reason for her to follow so closely, joking that he has nothing worth devouring, but Faye suggests he simply lead if he knows better. They argue over supplies as Shield reveals an apple core, insisting he avoided eating everything only because rationing mattered more than taste right now. Shield accuses Faye of secretly finishing an entire week's worth of food, leaving her confused about how she became responsible for the shortage. Faye admits human food has become a rare novelty after centuries without it, casually adding that fresh blood still outshines any soup she has tried. Faye reveals that people once called her Faye long ago, and Shield accepts the shortened name instead of asking for anything longer or more complicated. Walking further, Shield questions why dragons never attack human cities, and Faye explains that humans simply do not taste good and always retaliate anyway. Faye scolds Shield for wandering off the path again, eager to finally reach a bath while he brushes off the mistake with a sheepish laugh. Shield privately admits Faye has proven somewhat useful right as they discover a slumbering, oddly shaped dragon resting quietly against a nearby tree trunk. Faye admits watching him constantly grows irritating whenever he needs a private moment, until she suddenly notices what looks like a city ahead of them. The pair arrive in the prosperous city of Again, greeted by bustling crowds, and Shield excitedly declares it lives up to every rumor he heard. Standing amid the busy streets, Shield happily plans to take adventurer jobs and settle into a comfortable new life away from his old title. Inside a cave, weak monsters barely scratched by his attacks mock him, and Faye questions how someone who once beat her struggles against such enemies. Faye snaps back that his own lack of knowledge and skill is to blame, while Shield insists monsters simply flee whenever they notice her nearby. Devastated that his fresh start feels ruined already, Shield suddenly remembers a valuable item, stopping his sulking the moment he recalls what he still owns. They travel to Count Albert's mansion, where Shield and Faye receive a warm welcome as honored guests invited for a formal, upscale dinner engagement. Albert entrusts his daughter to Shield's care, explaining that having the former court wizard tutor her privately is an honor he never expected to receive. Before dinner, Albert praises Shield's composed attitude, though Faye teases that he seems unusually strange, prompting Shield to insist survival matters more than manners. Albert questions whether Shield can truly still only use barrier magic despite becoming a court wizard, while asking if rumors about his daughter's talent are true. Distracted mid-conversation, Shield snaps at Faye for staring elsewhere, while she quietly wonders what she will do if the daughter requests new spells. Albert leads them into a grand dining hall, and Shield's mind briefly blanks at the sight of endless food covering the entire table. Faye devours everything in sight without hesitation, while Shield eats just as ravenously, both ignoring Albert's amused comment about their voracious table manners. Albert happily demands more food himself, delighted by the taste, though he quietly hoped to actually discuss something concerning his daughter tonight. Shield admits he has no time for manners while starving, gulping down another plate as Albert watches his daughter Amelia nearby with quiet curiosity. Shield notices Amelia radiates an impressive amount of magic, growing anxious that eating too much might get him fired before teaching even begins. Later, Albert introduces Shield and Faye to Amelia as her new private tutors, explaining they are court wizards sent to nurture her talent. Albert weeps with joy over his daughter's kindness, cheering for her to learn everything she can from these two supposedly prestigious wizards. Amelia greets them briefly before Albert rushes off, insisting he must study hard himself, leaving the three alone together outside the mansion. Amelia warns them that honesty will spare them trouble, demanding Shield and Faye reveal the truth about who they really are. Sitting elegantly with tea, Amelia questions whether Shield's pocket watch was genuinely earned or simply bought to fake his identity as a wizard. She adds that her father would blame himself terribly if he ever discovered they had deceived him about their true qualifications and backgrounds. When Amelia insists on hearing everything, Shield hesitantly explains by pointing toward the massive barrier protecting the entire kingdom of Helena nearby. He calls it embarrassing that the sacred barrier covering the whole continent is somehow relevant, since it is famously known everywhere already. Amelia stares in confusion, asking why he seems embarrassed, right before Shield admits, almost sheepishly, that he was the one who created it. Amelia scolds him for using such a serious title carelessly, explaining that Helena's 10 court wizards are revered as sacred highest-ranking magicians nationwide. Her eyes sharpen with challenge, warning Shield that he will bear full responsibility if his claim about being a court wizard proves false. Shield insists he already told her he is one of those 10 wizards, adding that he plans to remain one someday regardless of doubt. Faye interjects that Shield was expelled after creating that very barrier, becoming an unwanted political nuisance despite his impressive magical accomplishment. Amelia questions why he still maintains this charade, insisting no nation would ever expel someone considered their celebrated hero and protector. Frustrated, Amelia dismisses their explanation as ridiculous, ordering them out while Faye quietly reminds Shield that she only came here for work. Faye questions why she should bother convincing this grouchy little girl while Shield points out she just finished eating a full meal. Faye agrees to at least watch over Amelia, though she refuses to take any lessons and demands to remain silent during her own practice. Shield notices Amelia seems genuinely serious about becoming a court mage, quietly examining her heavily worn magic doll standing nearby in the courtyard. Amelia unleashes powerful offensive magic, freely combining fire, water, and wind at once, shocking Shield with her impressive elemental range and control. She adds enhancement enchantments into her attacks, proving she handles support magic just as effortlessly, leaving Shield visibly startled by her versatility. The magic doll takes another brutal barrage of slashing spells, shattering further under Amelia's relentless combination of elemental force and precision strikes. Amelia admits she still needs more practice, while Faye silently observes that her control and variety already rival the highest-ranking mages in Helena. Shield applauds her performance, though he points out her dolls look worn purely because she has only ever trained against lifeless targets before. Shield insists that real combat experience matters, offering to personally train Amelia himself since any fraud would have already fled from this challenge. Frustrated by his confidence, Amelia declares she will personally demonstrate what being a true court mage actually looks like against him directly. Having used up her magic already, Amelia challenges Shield to hand-to-hand combat instead. Determined to prove her strength without holding back, Shield asks Faye to handle the hand-to-hand portion for him, though she quickly declines, leaving him no choice but to accept himself. Faye lounges nearby, admitting the food here is excellent, but worries that fighting properly might accidentally kill Amelia and ruin their arrangement entirely. Faye teases Shield not to lose against the girl, while he silently focuses on tracking Amelia's surprising speed as she charges forward. Amelia lands a solid punch directly against Shield's shoulder, though he remains completely unaffected. Confusing her with his effortless physical resilience, Shield calmly explains he always maintains a defensive barrier covering his entire body, which absorbs impacts no matter how hard she strikes. Undeterred, Amelia throws another furious punch aimed straight at his face, determined to find some way past his seemingly impenetrable defense. Just before impact, Shield redirects the momentum, revealing her attack was actually a feint that failed to catch him off guard. Shield explains it makes no difference where she strikes, since his barrier absorbs every hit equally, leaving Amelia stunned by the revelation. Shield jokes that losing to him means she cannot fire him, while Amelia grumbles, questioning whether he eats iron to withstand her attacks. Shield happily announces they can stay longer thanks to secured lodging and food, while Faye rests nearby, satisfied with his winning outcome. Amelia vows to eventually get rid of him, though Shield insists he will remain her tutor, cheering about tonight's promised feast together. A maid alerts Shield that Amelia has fallen sick, prompting him to rush toward her room, refusing to believe it without seeing her. Shield discovers Amelia suffers internal bleeding and a dangerously high fever, insisting he can heal her himself as a qualified court mage. Faye questions whether he truly knows healing magic, watching as Shield channels glowing energy directly toward Amelia's weakened, feverish body. She emerged abruptly at the entry, gripping countless treats, insisting to see the girl's head. Her resolved gaze met hers, quietly questioning the purpose nearby this unexpected, tense confrontation here. Nearing cautiously, she acknowledged learning rumors she had been healed, though uncertainty clouded her chest. Gripping her wrist, the woman maintained proving magic's truth, saying another chance to demonstrate her worth. Banned the great estate, she declared a contest would resume until surrender without more restrictions. Shield chuckled assuredly, saying she'd never regret this contest, even if death claimed her swiftly. The woman summoned countless spears of magic, filling the sky with overwhelming, dazzling, devastating energy instantly. Her tone dared him, insisting proof of his protection, while he readied a measured response. The spears shot ahead, tearing the air, aiming to crush any fragile barrier the man made. Raising his hand steadily, he activated barrier and absorbed her assaults without strain or fear. Her greatest assaults broken harmlessly toward his barrier, leaving her startled by his mysterious protection. Resolved, she assembled a swirling vortex of strength, launching herself into an all-out attack. Hovering overhead, he readied to respond decisively, collecting vast energy under his outstretched palms steadily. Shield lifted his hand, neutralizing her chaotic magic with unwavering focus and precise command instantly. She tightened her fist, releasing glowing droplets of energy, calling defiantly to break his composure. She released a towering wave resolved to finally overpower his unshakable, absorbing mystic defenses. Observing the surging water, he steadily accepted its risk, analyzing its impact without losing focus. Grinning, he absorbed the strike, invoking his barrier of magic absorption to drain her strength. With a certain gaze, he inquired what plan remained for her frantic counterattack attempt. Raindrops began falling, surprising him, as the man questioned if this was natural or her doing. She released blunt ice magic, her tone mocking as frost spread nearby her resolved stance. He glanced down in shock as thick ice clamped nearby his ankles, restricting movement instantly. Laughing, she hurled dozens of sharp icicles, insisting the man finally surrender before her growing might. Instead of fear, he commended her talent aloud, admiring her clever and relentless mystic creativity. But as his palm glowed darkly, he readied to counter with overwhelming concealed strength. He regretted steadily, explaining his barrier's versatility as shards broken harmlessly nearby his footing. She shouted in frustration, blaming him of cheating, while he inquired her following plan. Breathing heavily, she leaned toward a broken dummy, her energy drained from relentless collapsed assaults. Frantic, she demanded to know what magic he employed, saying anything for an explanation. Blushing, the woman tightened her fist and finally called him sensei, taking his overwhelming superiority. He boldly admitted merely using barrier magic, grinning as she threatened him for bragging excessively. Steadily, he clarified that despite this, he still arose to become a respected court mage. Her gaze spun in shock, overwhelmed by the revelation. The man was the legendary shield Rayless. The woman screamed it was impossible, clutching her face while he verified his identity with laughter. Incapable to process everything, she became and raced away, shrieking in full confused embarrassment. The woman peeked shyly into the dining chamber, seeing the table readied with countless dishes. While nibbling bread, she inquired again if he was really the Grand Shield Mage. The woman flushed, apologizing tearfully for her rude attitude, confessing how unrefined she must have seemed. Admitting the man was her lifelong idol, the woman begged forgiveness for acting disrespectful, despite her admiration. Sitting jointly, she glanced uneasily, wondering about Lady Faye's connection with the legendary Grand Shield. While munching meal, she clarified the worm merely trailed after each strike was deflected readily. Introducing herself as Bahamut, the worm greeted courteously, while an ancient memory resurfaced in her. She recalled the Wormwoods' leadership was undecided, risking an invasion if nothing changed shortly. Resolved, he volunteered to aid decide their leader, overlooking her frantic plea not to interfere. The woman cautioned that provoking dragons could trigger a world-ending conflict like centuries ago with deities. A massive worm emerged from the trees, glaring down at them with ancient, menacing authority. Right then, she pointed uneasily, reminding everyone they'd reached the wood's entrance distant sooner than she'd hoped. With dread, she identified the beast as Nidhugg, the dreaded and mighty black worm overlord. The black worm declared his planning to lead, threatening conflict if humans interfere with dragons. Two enormous dragons confronted off, their roars shaking the mountains as tension ignited a standoff. Then, she gasped, questioning any mortal could withstand dragons while he steadily held her to security. The dragons clashed hard, shock waves tearing the woods as raw strength broke between ancient rivals. Shield lifted his palm, firm and quiet, as she observed, breath held in wonder. He activated barrier magic surrounding them in a glowing dome, resolved to shield everyone entirely. He grinned, explaining steadily that protecting the whole city was no miracle, just simple strain. Lightning broke as dragons collided overhead the fortress, Amelia panicking about fighting them someday herself. Then a roaring blast exploded from the worm's mouth, splitting the sky with dazzling energy. Then, they gazed up in shock as Bahamut readily deflected the strike, her strength undeniable now. Steadily stepping ahead, Bahamut called it problematic, her confidence unsettling despite the raging battlefield nearby her. She clarified nonchalantly the strike would impact obedience, leaving them speechless at her casual attitude. Amelia held her face, overwhelmed that the Grand Shield and Bahamut casually defeated the worm. Shield clarified big barriers attract politics, threat humans consistently exploit any strength they can discover. Seated jointly, the noble acknowledged he never expected Shield was the mage nearby the barrier. With regret, the noble declared Shield too serious, announcing the man could no longer remain tutor. Shield slammed the table, insisting why his tutoring was terminated without any obvious cause proposed. The elder clarified his magic threatened the continent's strength balance, making his presence too dangerous. Then, Shield asked their decision, suspecting hidden schemes existed rendering his protective barriers obsolete and unneeded. Shield recalled how his barrier guarded Helena, receiving fame abroad, yet stirring envy among nobles. Walking away unappreciated, the man learned whispers mocking his barriers, understanding his homeland never valued him. The elder shouted angrily, condemning Helena's leaders for rejecting mighty magic and acting so foolishly. Then, the man exhaled heavily, admitting negotiations with the central government were ongoing and beyond his command. The mage buried his head, lamenting how politics destroyed everything the man labored so hard protecting. Learning of Nidhugg's strike, the elder panicked, suspecting the group had battled creatures worshipped as gods. Revealing golden wings, Faye acknowledged she was Bahamut and defended the city toward Nidhogg solitary. The group examined ancient texts describing Uri, where dragons were worshipped as gods by all nations. Shield observed in shock as Faye verified everything, while an elder gripped his stomach uneasily. A noble proposed allegiance if Shield stayed, but he questioned their promises would again endure. Looking over the city, the man asked if freedom or trust existed anywhere for someone extraordinary. Despite everything, a lavish feast was readied, momentarily easing tension as everyone marveled jointly. Then, Faye teased him about eating everything, while the man questioned why the feast was so extravagant. As the man uneasily ate, he spotted her intense gaze, feeling strangely unsettled by her look. Without hesitation, Faye declared the woman hoped to mate, stunning everyone with her blunt honesty. Immediately, he questioned traveling jointly. Concerned her intentions were unclear and possibly dangerous to his freedom, Faye proposed companionship, suggesting they escape society's demands and reside traveling distant away jointly peacefully. The man maintained asking Amelia for directions, understanding she unhelpfully repeated, "Yes," no matter what happened. Amelia clung to him tightly, acting overly affectionate while the man struggled to maintain composure. Her palms wrapped nearby his limb, her words implying devotion while he sensed growing concern. Walking between them, the man hoped no chaos would arise, but sensed something nearing very shortly. Abruptly, a fresh figure emerged overhead, stating assuredly they had finally discovered their intended target. Startled, he shouted into the air, insisting to know who was abruptly nearing them. A certain beastwoman named Muriel introduced herself as a sword saint from the Deliver Arias. Then Muriel clarified the woman had learned from intelligence reports that Shield Rayless had been expelled recently. By the Queen's order, the woman came to escort him personally as a special guest. Then Muriel cautioned she'd take him by impact to Arias if he declined her invitation. Shield declined courteously, resolved to choose his own course instead of obeying royal commands again. Meryl agreed steadily, threat he would awaken in Arias regardless of any protest proposed. With practice might, she lifted her sword, readying to strike and subdue him immediately. His gaze widened, feeling the surge of her strength as the woman attacked without hesitation. Now, Shield countered her strike, conjuring a barrier method intended specifically to destroy her mighty weapon. Meryl reeled back in shock, entirely unprepared for her strike to be so readily deflected. The woman examined the blade, startled it survived, while Shield questioned why it hadn't split apart. Praising his magic, the woman boasted the sword's origin, certain it wouldn't break from mere barriers. Meryl leapt high again, resolved to overpower him with another precise and forceful strike. Right then, smirking, she dared him more, readying a fresh strike as his protection shimmered and shifted. Shield steadily spread his limbs, creating a wide barrier to counter any incoming surprise assaults. The man sensed movement nearby him but paused patiently, wondering when Meryl would finally strike decisively. Meryl charged fiercely, merely to discover his barrier had transformed into an unexpected spherical protection. With a certain smirk, Shield activated barrier bodily reflective, redirecting her attack away instantly. The counterattack hit Meryl hard, throwing her back across the courtyard before the woman could recover. Bruised but resolved, Meryl gradually arose, declining to accept defeat despite her battered appearance. Shield gazed in shock, amazed the woman could still stand. Recognizing her incredible stamina and resolve, Meryl acknowledged her strike's collapse. Acknowledging his barrier redirected all her strength away at her. She ridiculed his claim of special treatment, stating might was essential to earn any respect. Clutching her sword, the woman grinned frantically, announcing she would maintain attacking until victory was hers. Shield observed steadily, aware she'd never break his barrier no matter how fast she moved. Meryl attacked from each angle, but he assuredly declared her efforts entirely useless toward his protection. Frantic, she readied her greatest strike, resolved this last strike would finally destroy his shield. Her blade hit with everything she had, but the barrier remained unbroken, redirecting her impact. She crashed hard toward the barrier as Shield commended her strain, amazed by her resolve. Meryl acknowledged her defeat, astonished the woman. The sword saint couldn't even touch Shield's strength. Shield uneasily suggested she cover herself while she demanded why he remained so peace-observing. He proposed his coat courteously, and Meryl agreed with a faint, grateful smile despite embarrassment. The woman resolved to rest and discover another way to capture his barrier magic eventually. As they departed jointly, Shield exhaled, feeling strangely guilty while everyone proposed getting something to dine. Meryl halted Shield, explaining she needed to ask something serious that weighed on her thoughts. Without hesitation, the woman proposed marriage, hoping the man would accept and join her life as husband. Shield froze in shock while the others gazed, entirely confused by her abrupt, unexpected proposal. Arias was cornered by a fierce warrior, stating him her husband, shocking his companions deeply. Right then, the warrior maintained marriage showed her might. While Arias escaped in terror, rejecting her sharp proposal, a resolved girl claimed Arias served to her solitary, calling she was exactly his perfect type. The warrior ridiculed her rival's little chest, certain her allure would readily claim. Eerie as always, Another demon woman emerged steadily, stating she merely hoped to devour Iria's entire someday shortly. The demon girl disclosed her strength grew by consuming others, intending to devour Iria's someday. The woman promised to wait until Irias grew ancient, offering uneasy friendship in the meantime. They shook palms gravely, agreeing to an unusual alliance as dragons witnessed their declaration jointly. The other girls objected aloud, enraged that no one inquired their consent for this decision. Resolved, the blonde swore payback and confidence her form would eventually surpass each rival's charms. A concealed figure observed Irias, startled the rumors of his exile became out entirely real. An enchanting woman emerged gracefully, introducing herself as Shield Rayless and greeting Irias with confidence. Right then, Gabriel Paraly disclosed her identity and invited Irias to mine it, praising his uncommon spatial magic. Then, Irias courteously declined her proposal, explaining the man hoped to remain here and rest for now. Grinning, the woman disappeared instantly, admitting she excelled at retrieving stubborn people without leaving any trace. Gabriel charged swiftly toward Irias, resolved to seize him before the man escaped her grasp again. Puzzled, she collided with an unseen barrier, incapable to see or understand its perfect protection. Raising her limbs, she acknowledged capturing him required greater strain, conjuring tremendous magic nearby herself. Abruptly, an enormous stone foot crashed down, shocking Irias as Gabriel floated near her creation. The giant's eye unsealed wide, its gaze locked fiercely on Irias with unstoppable smashing strength. Gabriel settled steadily upon the stone giant's neck, stating she would seize Irias by impact. The massive beast charged ahead, its clubs smashing structures while Gabriel cautioned about unnecessary shattering nearby them. Grinning wickedly, she cautioned Irias not to perish as the giant readied a smashing strike. Stone hands slammed jointly hard, the contact shaking the earth with unstoppable, earth-breaking devastating strength released. Gabriel observed uneasily, questioning any barrier could withstand her summoned creature's overwhelming last strike now. Irias emerged unharmed, steadily scolding Gabriel for startling him as broken debris fell nearby them. He glanced away indifferently while Gabriel resolved to maintain fighting, unwilling to surrender so readily. Now, hovering overhead, she summoned a suspended rock mass, insisting Irias remain and head her strength. Gabriel cautioned him not to trust appearances, revealing merely a fraction of her might so distant. The enormous rock descended, threatening to annihilate the city as Irias objected the reckless devastation released. The demon girls exhaled, irritated that Gabriel's strike was pulling everyone else into her reckless plot. Yelling her desperation, Gabriel commanded the suspended mass to fall while Irias readied to counter. He steadily lifted his palm, conjuring a barrier as Gabriel believed victory was finally hers. A dazzling shockwave broke outward, obliterating the descending rock prior to it could touch the city. Amazed, Gabriel gazed in shock, incapable to understand how her overwhelming magic had been neutralized entirely. Gabriel shouted frantically, vowing to teleport Irias away by impact to end their stalemate. Then, her spatial magic clashed with Irias' barrier, the energy bursting hard between their locked powers. Right then, when the magic dispersed, Gabriel was departed naked, blinking in shock at her vanished clothes right then. The girls observed in quiet before blaming Irias of secretly preferring women with big breasts. Blushing angrily, Irias maintained the incident was an accident and not an intentional perverted plot. Flustered, Irias handed her attire away, insisting she cover herself before additional chaos broke. Gabriel chuckled triumphantly, stating Irias must take responsibility and accept becoming her destined husband now. Then, the woman leaned close, boasting she'd outshine rivals as the perfect companion in each intimate moment. The two women demanded in reply, pressing Irias to choose between them with any hesitation. Overwhelmed, Irias objected the group ignored his feelings. While each woman resolved to seduce him eventually, a messenger reached urging everyone to talk formally as representatives before the kingdom's high authorities. Smirking, the rivals traded insults yet consented to negotiate, though one still vowed to devour Irias. Then, Irias stammered uneasily, trying to protest as everyone became to glare at his hesitant objections. Then, he sensed something unusual nearing, murmuring in shock while the others paused, unaware of the risk. Abruptly, a violent explosion broke before them, scattering debris and dazzling light across the street. The worm girl remarked the ancient barrier collapse faster than anticipated after guarding 3 years. Then, Irias remained quietly, understanding a fresh era had started, shifting strength across each kingdom. He glanced away gravely, concluding the conflict was no longer his responsibility or his concern. In a council chamber, leaders assembled to debate Irias' destiny and his unstoppable barrier magic. Then, listening silently, Irias resolved it was time to consider his own course for the future. Then Uri's elder pledged lifetime court mage status, vast wealth, and noble rank to secure Irias. Right then, steadily, the swordswoman inquired permission to resume presenting her own kingdom's generous counter-offer to Irias. She assuredly promised Irias a dukedom and lands nearly equal to ruling a little kingdom. Laughing, Irias declared the man would accept Irias' offer, before learning Minut's last persuasive proposal too. Grinning nearby her glasses, Gabriel unveiled an offer granting see, deliver, and vast territory command. Gabriel boldly promised to cede territories if Uri and Irias allowed S.H.I.E.L.D. to join Minut. At that moment, everyone lifted their palms, voting excitedly to send Irias to Minut with no his agreement. Meanwhile, Helena's palace broke in terror, insisting replies about the shattering of the eternal barrier. A knight commander reported to the enraged king, announcing his arrival and readiness for orders. Then, begging permission, the commander requested authority to lead the kingdom-wide search for the vanished shield. Right then, the king commended the commander's courage, trusting merely him to lead the crisis response effectively. Sighing heavily, the king admitted the man longed to rest while entrusting everything to his knight. Enraged, the commander slammed his fist, insisting why Elaine approved such a reckless, doomed plot. Elaine scoffed coldly, blaming him of sharing guilt and reminding him of his promised rewards. Right then, she called defiantly, declining blame while he shouted away, exposing their hidden bargain for strength. The commander swore they must hide everything. While Elaine sobbed the woman loved her prince deeply. From the palace balcony, he ordered witnesses bribed to quiet rumors of the shattered betrothal. Elsewhere, another agent plotted to torture Irias if needed to restore the lost barrier's strength. Right then, Elaine departed silently, leaving the commander solitary to prepare the following stage of their plan. Resolved, he held his sword, vowing it was finally the concealed killer's time to act. They assembled nearby the table, sharing laughter. While S.H.I.E.L.D. concerned about choosing his unknown future, S.H.I.E.L.D. folded his limbs, stating assuredly he'd stay nearby, rejecting offers that demanded massive commitments. She reminded him nations would chase him, frantic to seize the barrier's unmatched protective strength always. Sliding a treaty across the table, the woman proposed giving him authority over Mirai's eastern deliver. She gravely inquired him to govern Mirai independently, trusting him to guard its people entirely. He understood taking autonomy intended close sovereignty, a burden he never believed he would neck. The council requested barriers close wormwoods, urging his powers guard all kingdoms from shattering. A massive worm bellowed, reminding everyone that no fortress remains secure without S.H.I.E.L.D.'s protective magic. The group commended Mirai's resources, eager to proceed, while laughter and cautious agreements clouded the chamber. Glasses clinked jointly, sealing alliances and stating the birth of his independent domain at Endure. According to their agreement, S.H.I.E.L.D. traveled north to Irias and readied the protective barrier magic. Then the man departed swiftly, leaving the people observing in wonder as he vanished beyond the gate. S.H.I.E.L.D. complete the barrier readily, feigning it took longer so he seemed additional considerate. The man requested time to explore peacefully, receiving permission to cross each checkpoint with no restrictions. A ruby bracelet, proof of his title, was showed along with playful marriage suggestions. Right then, the women maintained he remain as husband, overlooking his embarrassment and unknown expression entirely. Resolved to escape uncertainty, S.H.I.E.L.D. grabbed her palm and swiftly led everyone away from negotiations. He counted their funds cautiously, understanding 10,000 gold money vanished faster than he anticipated. Despite intending 10 days of travel, their funds was gone after merely 3 exhausting days. Then frustration broke when she scolded him for overeating, suggesting the man begin working immediately to survive. She declared she'd merely dine him if he starved, grinning without a hint of shame. S.H.I.E.L.D. resolved to earn funds discreetly, resolved to avoid illegal duties or revealing his identity. Within the Adventurers Guild, raucous voices cheered, marking quests and the promise of shared glory. Then, he murmured uneasily while she bluntly remarked everyone glanced too frail for real dangerous missions. A guild receptionist greeted them kindly, ready to assign duties suited to their concealed might. The man declared the man register as an adventurer, while the receptionist eyed him skeptically at first. With no references or experience, the man was assigned the lowest rank E by default. Then, he objected frail quests wouldn't pay enough, but the receptionist maintained his rank resolved assignments strictly. Frantic, he complained about feeding a companion who consumed portions intended for whole traveling celebrations. Abruptly, a stranger emerged offering aid while the guild staff reacted with surprise and interest. Ises emerged assuredly, introducing himself while the guild chamber murmured in recognition of his reputation. S.H.I.E.L.D. maintained he could handle harder jobs solitary, but Azaz steadily vouched for his capability, grinning. Azaz proposed to lead him into the insisting world of high-level adventuring missions. Everyone murmured about the famous B-rank hero supporting a clueless rookie with such unshakable confidence. Right then, the group consented to split rewards evenly, though Azaz teased him for thinking additional allies were joining. The group resolved on the Jinja turtle quest, unaware how stubborn the beast could actually be. Azaz cautioned them its shell resisted everything, while the group descended cautiously into the rocky dungeon. He clarified the turtle consistently hid frustrating Shield as Faye casually snacked near them quietly. Shield panicked about using barrier magic, understanding protection spells were useless if the target disappeared. Then, feigning confidence, he maintained success was certain, though Azaz questioned any monsters were even close by. Azaz inquired who would guard the front or rear, baffling them with basic plan queries. He exhaled heavily, reminding Shield that combat roles counted, urging him merely to stay secure now. With resolve, Azaz ordered Shield to hide nearby him and avoid any reckless moves entirely. Then, abruptly, a massive beast burst forth, roaring with such impact the cavern walls trembled hard. Overlooking alerts, Azaz charged fearlessly, eager to prove his might toward the rampaging monster's fury. Azaz charged boldly, stating he would end the battle with a single decisive strike. His sword clanged uselessly. The turtle vanished underground, leaving everyone annoyed by its tactics. Right then, he attempted slashing again and again, but the monster's shell resisted each strike entirely. Shield tossed him a replacement blade, concerned the following strike would destroy his weapon outright. Frantic, Azaz poured magic inside his sword, invoking barrier enhancement to finally pierce the shell. Then, Shield cautioned everyone to stay away, considering reinforcing Azaz's sword with his barrier magic cautiously. Azaz sensed his strikes growing mightier, confidence surging as he readied a decisive finishing strike. His blade crashed down repeatedly, yet the monstrous shell declined to split under any impact. The cavern trembled as the giant beast abruptly tucked in, readying its unstoppable rolling charge. With terrifying speed, the Jinja turtle spun ahead, threatening to crush everything in its course. Then Shield panicked, understanding he must cast a barrier nearby Azaz before disaster hit immediately. Azaz braced himself, channeling strength into his sword as the monster charged with overwhelming impact. The contact hurled him back hard, while Shield screamed his identity across the echoing cavern. Though shaken, Azaz remained up, relieved to see the beast finally emerging from its shell. Then, breathing heavily, the man declared the monster's rank mislabeled. It was Noah rank, but really S rank. Shield noticed Azaz cornered. Recognizing his ally had drained each option to maintain remaining upright, he shouted frantically, urging Azaz to retreat as the beast charged faster than before. Azaz cursed Shield for moving closer, fearful the charging monster would crush them both instantly. Right then, Shield threw up his palm, praying his barrier magic would activate prior to the jaw's hit. Blood splattered across the stones as Azaz glanced down, amazed by his deep, abrupt wound. Faye observed quietly from the shadows, her expression peace while chaos unfolded in the cavern. Debris settled nearby Azaz's motionless form, and Shield dreaded he might really be dead now. A massive black shell crashed down, leaking dark liquid everywhere, shocking everyone who witnessed it. At that moment, he gazed at the severed Jinja turtle face, understanding their barrier had decapitated the monster instantly. Steadily, he acknowledged raising a barrier while others panicked over the beast's abrupt, brutal defeat. Shield descended the wreckage, revealing his barrier halted the unstoppable charge with no any complex incantations. Without hesitation, she shattered the shell piece, intending to dine it despite everyone's concerned protests. She chewed the shell assuredly, surprising everyone as its texture split aloud between her teeth. Abruptly, she pressed the shell toward her away, readying to demonstrate its concealed mystic property. Infusing energy, the woman disclosed the shell could harden instantly, becoming a protective spiked armor piece. Shield suggested hiding it since it glanced absurd, while she consented to merely reveal when necessary. While she observed steadily, one man fainted from stress, understanding additional chaos was inevitably nearing them. The group ready to depart, relieved their travels would be safer with the legendary shield accompanying them now. Within, the man humbly declined praise, while they invited him to join their following adventure in Mirai. He courteously declined, explaining he remained the city's top adventurer, saying they would meet again someday grateful. She departed him a little mystic token, while their group finally went the bustling city. Reaching drained, they quarreled over spending habits, relieved they'd survived, but concerned about future expenses already. They went the nearly deserted city, puzzled when frantic residents mistook him for a holy priest. Disappointed, the townspeople held their heads, lamenting the priest's pause and feeling increasingly helpless and annoyed. Thinking swiftly, he proposed aid despite not being a priest, hoping to earn meal provisions. The group learned the whole city was sick from a curse, awaiting divine intervention to cure it. Desperation arose as he admitted barriers were useless toward curses, and starvation was becoming a danger. She consented to aid, joking she could dine him if schemes went badly wrong. They departed the concerned townspeople nearby, unsure if the curse existed. Insufficient a obvious destination ahead, Faye sensed an ancient, familiar scent close by, dismissing any curse too frail to harm humans. They trailed the trail deeper into the woods, alarmed by intense mystic energy surrounding their course. Prior to them, the lake's water glowed in sinister red, revealing something dangerous was definitely happening here. The group were startled by a tone addressing them assuredly, but neither understood who was speaking yet. A demon named Azazel emerged from the water, once her formidable ally in ancient wars. At that moment, overlooking protests, she steadily lifted her palm, readying to release the mighty seal restraining him. She clarified Azazel's leaking magic had cursed the city, concluding to break his containment entirely. Now, Azazel remained revived in peace, observing them as energy burst across the clearing nearby his form. Azazel knelt gravely, addressing Faye with respect, stating 300 years had elapsed since meeting. The man regretted for being decided by humans, offering himself for any punishment Faye deemed appropriate. Now abruptly, Azazel glared furiously, insisting an explanation for why a mortal was remaining near Faye. Believing conflict must resume, Azazel declared the man would kill the mortal to prove his loyalty. Raising his palm, Azazel declared he had grown even mightier, resolved to demonstrate his fresh strength. Azazel released corruption magic growing dark energy, while the mortal observed warily for any strike. He boldly clarified this magic was made during his seal, certain no hero could resist it. Faye acknowledged it was impressive magic. Threat it was beyond any mortal's ability to counter now. Azazel pledged to break any hero, offering Faye the chance to rule humanity jointly once additional. Faye declined, cautioning that mightier threats existed, stating she would not begin another pointless conflict again. Azazel inquired where such a mighty foe existed, resolved to prove his overwhelming might immediately. He pointed at the amazed man, stating this mortal must be the greatest being they needed. Faye proposed if Azazel killed him, the woman might consider rekindling the conflict toward humanity. Again, Azazel agreed, steadily stating he merely needed to kill the mortal, overlooking the man's protests. Dark energy surged nearby Azazel as he readied to unleash corruption magic plainly at his enemy. A massive explosion of dark energy broke, shaking the woods with its corrupting strength released. Faye observed steadily, asking if Azazel's magic really corrupted everything it touched with. No any exceptions. They observed intently as the blast settled, trying to see if the mortal survived the strike. Azazel glanced certain, stating the battle easy, while Faye cautioned him not to underestimate his enemy. The mortal emerged from the debris, shaken but alive, acknowledging how terrifying Azazel's might really was. Azazel questioned if his strength was incomplete, then resolved to strike the mortal plainly instead. He lifted a giant mass of earth overhead, readying to crush the mortal without hesitation. The earth exploded under contact, debris filling the air as Azazel observed steadily. Certain of victory, Azazel began intending the invasion, while the others understood the risk was increasing. Despite exhaustion, the mortal remained ready, protecting himself and complaining he needed time to catch breath. The mortal glanced nearby frantically. Startled, Azazel vanished without leaving any sign of his presence. He acknowledged he had never confronted corruption magic before and sensed entirely incapable to counter it. From the shadows, Azazel's tone emerged assuredly, revealing he had already positioned himself to strike plainly. Azazel emerged nearby him, gripping his neck, grinning coldly and murmuring a last mocking goodbye word. Seeing Azazel's head pondered in his eye, he understood with dread he was about to perish. And then, shield grabbed the foe's limb, reflecting barrier magic away with fierce resolve. The blonde warrior swung a blade swiftly, aiming to destroy the unyielding protection with impact. Puzzled, he moved away, questioning the unusual barrier while remembering ancient alerts about its might. The elf clarified his barrier's terrifying strength, able to repel all magic without visible strain. Grinning steadily, Shield maintained no analysis could breach the absolute barrier protecting his form. The blonde warrior attacked quietly, yet the mage activated decoy magic to mislead the attack. A mighty impact broke in the earth, sending debris scattering as the decoy magic exploded hard. Blood dripped down the warrior's limb while the mage steadily advised him to stop fighting more. Startled, the mage learned the wound would heal in 1 week, drawing genuine amazement immediately. Then, the elf asked humanity's abilities, then acknowledged understanding Lord Faye's purpose nearby this unusual conflict. The elf understood the real battle would begin 10 years after the mage finally died. Then, the woman invited Azazel to retreat, while the mage dreaded humanity's extinction after his own death. Azazel declined to abandon immediately, saying unfinished matters needed notice before disappearing to the shadows. Dark energy split the earth apart, making everyone to step away as shadows assembled rapidly. With a last goodbye, Azazel vanished into darkness, leaving quiet and unease among the group. The mage admired their might yet concerned about making such frightening beings into trusted allies. The elf clarified real strength came from overwhelming impact, not merely their unmatched combat abilities solitary. Azazel verified the group ruled through fear, making all opponents and comrades into submission without hesitation. He understood each follower, including traitors, counted toward the total, feeling startled. By that revelation, the woman reassured him loyal allies, never betrayed, reminding him of his confidence in protective barriers. Then, the mage hurried ahead to report success, as his companions struggled to maintain up closely. Then through the trees, the group finally spotted Murray, the great city shining under the obvious sky. The man complained about constant suspicion, but relief grew mightier as the city walls came closer. Drained and starving, she demanded faster walking, while he commended their endurance through countless dangers. Remaining jointly, they admired Murray's vast architecture, understanding their travels had really reached a turning point. He moved ahead, wondering if the great estate and rewards really served to him solitary. Jointly, they neared the massive estate entrance, revealing this impressive building was now their residence. He showed a beaded token, proving their right to enter without more questioning from the soldiers. Introducing himself assuredly as Shield Rayless, the man immediately attempted to appear dignified before his companion. The soldiers bowed respectfully, welcoming the fresh lord and inviting them to finally arrive within. They quipped about a golden coach, but interest grew as the gates gradually creaked open. Nearing the estate courtyard, they spotted covered servants readying silently, creating an unsettling first impression. Jointly, the two went the grounds, trailed by quiet attendants, each observing them with concealed expressions cautiously. A covered servant led them within respectfully, explaining that someone serious awaited their audience patiently. Crossing the lavish chamber, they sensed both anticipation and uncertainty about what would happen following. They were informed to wait, feeling unwelcome as servants cast blunt looks without any warmth. The mage sensed hostility, while the woman declared assuredly that rejection would merely lead to elimination instead. Curious, the man questioned who they awaited, but abrupt noise interrupted the uneasy moment abruptly. A harsh elder emerged, flanked by soldiers carrying authority in each step across the chamber. He greeted them formally as representatives of Helena country, tone peace but gaze cautiously measuring them. Van Gogh introduced himself steadily, stating the man managed the domain again since the previous lord's reign. The man implied the fresh lord's humble origins, suggesting life might resume unchanged for everyone's benefit. The mage understood Van Gogh intended him as a puppet ruler with no any genuine authority retained. He managed a tense smile, silently acknowledging this fight for command could endure a while. Abruptly, the blonde warrior emerged again, entering defiantly with loyal followers, ready to challenge everything established. Then, Van Gogh recoiled in shock, incapable to understand the abrupt defiance erupting before his startled gaze. Fate declared the man free, decided allies, requesting permission to serve Shield Rayless for 10 years. With approval granted, a fighter charged ahead as Van Gogh screamed about their audacious insolence openly. Right then, dark strength exploded across the chamber, breaking walls while the horned warrior advanced without hesitation. Black mass crashed onto the floor hard, growing in sinister presence. None dared approach carelessly. Azazel's gaze narrowed coldly, stating without hesitation that nothing would obstruct his course any longer. Darkness poured across the chamber as fearful soldiers backed away, incapable to resist his strength. Beluga steadily moved ahead, pulling her sword when Azazel commanded her to cleanse the intruders. The man approved her mission, granting permission to eliminate anyone the woman judged unworthy of their presence. A shaking man begged for relief as Beluga advanced, her expression unchanging and sword lifted high. Beluga cautioned him coldly, explaining unfinished business would merely create greater problems in the future. Then, with dead gaze, he observed her blade descend, understanding no escape remained from her judgment. Blood splattered across the chamber as Van Gogh maintained a grim facade despite witnessing the execution. Then, enraged, Van Gogh threatened retaliation, merely to be silenced by Azazel's peace, unwavering command to stop. Then, Azazel released a wave of devastating energy, blasting aside any remnants of defiance instantly. Beluga answered assuredly that each other danger in the estate had already been removed permanently. She ordered the survivors acknowledged, their relieved voices revealing loyalty as they went cautiously jointly. Beluga declared merely these 5 showed harmless, shocking the mage who anticipated distant additional survivors. He gazed at the little group, discovering precisely who remained loyal among all former staff. His gaze narrowed at the bowed girl, puzzled by her presence among the spared few. Right then, the man promised double salaries if the group stayed, trying to restore order after the violent purge. With a grave tone, the man demanded their quiet, forbidding anyone from revealing the day's events. The survivors cheered gratefully, vowing loyalty and secrecy, their relief almost overwhelming after such chaos. Right then, yet one girl's fierce glare unsettled him, her presence too intense to dismiss as harmless. Right then, she moved ahead defiantly, meeting his gaze with quiet challenge while everyone else observed uneasily. He examined the girl's sharp gaze, understanding she hid a dangerous hidden nearby her quiet. The council assembled uneasily nearby the afraid girl, unsure why Van Gogh's guards dragged her here. Shield spotted her shaking palms bound by rope. Understanding she had suffered concealed torment solitary, the man learned she was the former lord's youngster, secretly imprisoned by Van Gogh to gain strength. The woman collapsed, wounded and frantic. Shield neared cautiously, offering aid despite her pleas to escape. Overwhelmed with shame, the woman hid her scars, yelling not to look upon her pain. She screamed, stating she would rather perish than endure additional humiliation and endless prison suffering. As tears fell, others observed. Understanding this cruel world had broke her spirit entirely. Shield demanded medicine be fetched immediately, resolved to care for her with no hesitation or judgment. The girl asked his kindness, unsure if he enslaved others, but he steadily proposed peace. Shaking, she took his palm and endure, murmuring in regret for all her suspicion. Lumi Faze bowed deeply, finally introducing herself and expressing gratitude for being saved from her captivity. At that moment, though the woman trusted Shield, she still questioned nobles, recalling how Van Gogh betrayed her family's honor. Her tone arose as the woman vowed to defend Mireille, her father's legacy, from invading demons with fierce resolve. She declared she would guard everyone she loved, no matter the danger. Beyond, Shield activated a barrier, assuring the townspeople they were finally secure nearby his magic. Shield's barrier encircled the bird's nest. Right then, an ancient man remarked at such unusual protective magic. Right then, a snake charged for the nest, but the barrier reversed it without any strain. The ancient man questioned why Shield mastered protection instead of strike spells, curious about his purpose. Shield replied firmly that barriers existed to guard something precious. The man could never risk losing. Lumi Faze understood he too fought for something serious, wondering silently what that cause could be. Shield proposed to teach her magic, daring Lumi Faze to grow mightier and reclaim the city herself. He clarified he merely taught barrier magic, surprising everyone who anticipated additional mighty offensive techniques instead. Observing her abandon, he silently hoped the barrier spells would someday really aid guard her. Turning to Azazel, Shield inquired casually what to do following as tensions still encircled them. Azazel proposed using the ancient lord's legacy to strengthen their position toward the coming threats. Then, examining shattered dikes, Shield understood constant floods had slowed the city's growth and crippled progress. The man exhaled, aware disaster recovery consumed resources, and repairing flood barriers demanded huge financial sacrifices. Townspeople assembled uneasily, questioning if Shield even cared for peasants' endurance or ignored their hardship. One woman moved ahead, clutching her blouse, chest massive with fear about what awaited them. An elder demanded replies, asking why the Lord allied with demons and ignored their suffering. Right then, Shield urged everyone to step away, apologizing for sounding harsh as tensions arose among townspeople. His allies maintained they came peacefully, intending merely flood command, not to begin any violence. Corrupt authorities panicked, fearing the project exposed their tax extortion, calling accusations to stir doubt. Then, when one rushed her in anger, the woman hit swiftly, defending herself with no hesitation. She confronted the crowd fearlessly, daring anyone who dared oppose their mission to step ahead. Shield acknowledged her magic was terrifying, vowing never to head such overwhelming strength as foes. He cautioned toward fear-based rules, stating he wished trust, not terror, to lead them. Raising his limbs, he readied to demonstrate the barrier's might instead of merely explaining it. A massive protective dome materialized, astonishing everyone as he steadily maintained the mighty protective magic. He declared it would hold for 3 years, townspeople murmuring doubts about its real might. Laughing kindly, Shield invited everyone to test the barrier themselves to prove its might. Then, he declared a great tournament, daring all mages to break his barrier for a prize. The winner would earn enchanted gear and an army rank, ensuring motivation for each challenger. Right then, skeptics muttered, dismissing it as simple barrier magic, unimpressed by the spectacle's apparent simplicity. At that moment, Shield corrected them, explaining this was the identical legendary barrier once defending all of Helena. Right then, the announcer commanded quiet, instructing participants to strike freely for 10 minutes to test might. With a sharp signal, warriors charged ahead, arms lifted, resolved to destroy the unyielding barrier. Spectators gasped as famous adventurers released all their might, filling the air with explosive impact. Then, certain challengers declared it effortless, while Shield steadily paused, curious to see the outcome unfold. Despite the onslaught, the barrier remained flawless, not a single scratch visible on its surface. At that moment, spectators cheered frantically, urging participants to maintain attacking with everything during the last countdown. A warrior punched the barrier with renewed might, sweat dripping as seconds ticked away relentlessly. Then, time expired as drained challengers collapsed, conceding defeat when no split emerged in Shield's barrier. Everyone gazed in wonder. Understanding nothing had changed, the barrier remained perfect and entirely untarnished. Shield moved ahead assuredly, ready to announce the verdict and declare the tournament's official result. Shield touched the barrier thoughtfully, evaluating each mark to decide the contest's fair outcome. Right then, he declared the results boldly, stating the strike that departed the greatest impression overall. Number 24 was named champion, raising his fist high as the crowd broke in applause. A companion asked the purpose of harmless contests, drawing Shield to explain their concealed benefit thoughtfully. Grinning kindly, he reminded her that comrades must consistently support and believe in each other. The woman hesitated, then acknowledged she'd underestimated him before, but now noticed his real worth. Embarrassed, the man wiped his head, wondering what sort of impression he'd been giving everyone. Azazel neared swiftly, announcing unexpected guests had reached unannounced at the estate seeking an audience. Shield grew alert, suspecting Gabriel was involved somehow, and braced himself for additional unexpected trouble. Then, the man exhaled heavily, already annoyed by the hassle of dealing with yet another visitor. Shield rebounded assuredly to his chamber, greeted by servants and the quiet demon girl. Servants murmured about the visitor, rumored greatest mage Olivier, as he moved the dim corridor. She tightened her thoughts, resolved to stay peace before opening the big wooden entry. Abrupt tone verified suspicion. A cup dropped, echoing across the polished marble floor. Emerging boldly, Lord Gamag disclosed himself, smirking at their uncertainty and concealed. Mounting dread, Shield gazed, puzzled, expecting Olivier, but met merely Gamag's smirk and mocking attitude instead. Remaining across the chamber, Gamag declared uncertainty while tension grew between the startled trio. Gamag sneered, boasting importance, stating the man came solely to retrieve their greatest barrier mage. The young lord scoffed, reminding Gamag he was banished and now abruptly wished away. He understood the king never halted this exile but needed his barrier additional than pride. Raising his palm steadily, he cautioned Gamag he declined to restoration without a real cause. Gamag charged ahead, mocking barrier magic, resolved to capture him alive despite any frantic resistance shown. Squatting assuredly, Gamag readied a magic, stating none had witnessed this strength release before. A dazzling flash broke instantly, making him to shield his gaze, vision nearly consumed entirely. Puzzled, he understood his barrier collapsed toward light, encircled by glowing illusions and taunting voices. He understood simple light wasn't in strike, but barrier magic held deeper, concealed capabilities inside. Resolved, he activated barrier magic detection, growing latticed energy across the broken, glowing chamber floor. Locating Gamag instantly, the man shouted defiantly, readying to strike through dazzling illusions and deceptive shadows. A surge of impact broke, hurling Gamag back through stone walls, falling columns all nearby. Debris cleared gradually. He wiped his gaze, relieved that finally his vision had rebounded. He examined Gamag embedded in debris, concerning even barrier magic might fail toward mightier foes shortly. A horned demon named Azazel emerged, steadily carrying bottles and meal, surprising everyone with timing. Azazel assessed the scene, offering to clean up Gamag as Faye requested reinforcement immediately. Right then, Azazel reassured them, explaining the greatest army selection would shortly conclude, might ready to be assembled. Beyond the fortress, hundreds assembled, ready to prove themselves worthy of joining the coming battles. Right then, a fierce elf girl declared victory, pointing her staff boldly over the defeated training field. Right then, observing from afar, he inquired who she was, curious about her overwhelming certain aura. The woman was Caprice, the greatest twin-blade swordsman, dominating the night selection finals without any hesitation, stepping ahead uneasily. The endured challenger readied, introducing himself under her sharp, assessing gaze. Tone shaking, he disclosed his identity, Oliver, while the crowd paused quietly for their last contest. The certain elf warrior declared victory after overwhelming her enemy. Remaining boldly amidst the training grounds, 2 spectators observed her from afar, recognizing her vast strength and position as a dreaded warrior. The woman taunted the crowd, daring challengers to head her, while whispers of her might spread. A hesitant knight moved ahead unwillingly, driven by duty, his form tense, facing inevitable defeat. The knight, introducing himself as Oliver, disclosed nervous resolve, despite shaking before the renowned champion. Caprice chuckled aloud, teasing Oliver for shaking so much he could barely lift his sword. Despite his fear, Oliver had proven himself through numerous matches to meet this last contest. Caprice finally spotted Shield observing close by, smirking at his abrupt interest in the unfolding battle. Oliver pleaded for relief while Caprice inquired permission to kill, receiving Shield's casual approval to resume. Their weapons arose in tense quiet, and with a signal, the last match began instantly. Caprice charged in with playful menace, threat Oliver not to perish before the match ended. Shield observed in alarm, understanding her overwhelming speed might cost them a fresh ally. Reacting swiftly, Shield cast a barrier to intercept Caprice's strike prior to it reached Oliver's face. Caprice blinked puzzled, as her blade sliced merely air and the target vanished entirely. Stepping away, she examined Oliver's position, wondering if he dodged by luck or concealed skill. Caprice ridiculed Oliver's retreat, slashing rapidly to corner him entirely toward the unforgiving stone barrier. Shield steadily lifted his palm, stating he would erect a barrier to guard Oliver again. Oliver shut his gaze serenely, Caprice lunging while assuming the man was surrendering to certain defeat. But the air thickened. Caprice understood everything changed as Oliver's presence became impossibly massive abruptly. Without threat, he moved ahead, an unshakable impact nearby each stride, silencing the observing crowd entirely. A shockwave burst outward nearby Caprice as the woman attempted to pinpoint Oliver's impossible movement again. Annoyed, she screamed for him to stop hiding, insisting a fair clash head-to-head immediately. Shield understood in wonder that Caprice herself now needed protection toward Oliver's abrupt, overwhelming presence. Feigning peace, Caprice stammered excuses while her confidence eroded under Oliver's firm, quiet advance ahead. In a single motion, Oliver's strength knocked her away, settling heavily before the astonished audience. Shield shouted Caprice's identity urgently, understanding she had been hurled away harder than anyone anticipated. Caprice lay amazed on the debris, her gaze wide, form incapable to move or talk. Shield moved closer, staring at Oliver, incapable to understand how he defeated her with one strike. Oliver's expression stayed unchanging, his gaze locked ahead, radiating a blunt, unshakable focus and might.
Caprice collapsed after an abrupt strike. Right then, Shield rushed over, alarmed by her condition. At that moment, the woman winced from the pain but remained again. The armored warrior observed her fight quietly. Resolved, Caprice wiped her lip and declared her resolve to battle with renewed might. Overlooking alerts, the woman charged at the man. He remained steadily, entirely unshaken by her danger. With a wave of his palm, strength surged. Then, the atmosphere shifted. The man was now grave. Caprice charged without hesitation, channeling everything the woman had into one frantic and reckless attack. Despite her strain, the man steadily stopped her blade, smirking without flinching under pressure. Her gaze widened in fury and frustration. Right then, her strength wasn't enough to pierce his protection. Then she identified the shift. He was mightier now, additional focused like another person entirely. Her strike was overpowered mid-air at that moment. A massive impact deflected her, sending shockwaves across the earth. Then, Caprice's strikes were relentless, but it sensed like she battled someone entirely fresh. Mightier, the woman changed tactics mid-battle, pushing for speed. Yet her enemy remained peace and unshaken. In a close clash, the man countered effortlessly, driving his blade toward her exposed side. Then, his follow-up kick descended squarely, knocking her back. Then, the woman couldn't react in time to block. Then, blood spilled as her consciousness faded. At that moment, the overwhelming difference in strength became painfully obvious. Then, remaining overhead her, Oliver lifted his sword, questioning whether the battle should really end here. With a quiet breath, he lifted his sword high, readying the last decisive strike. Caprice, bleeding yet defiant, agreed the outcome, her smirk hiding pain and pride under her words. Prior to the blade could fall, their superior intervened, halting the match with a commanding shout. Then he commended both warriors and unexpectedly promoted Oliver, stating him the fresh commander of warriors. Oliver hesitated yet agreed the handshake. Then his appointment as commander still sensed unreal to him. Then, everyone accepted Oliver's might. Then Caprice, recovering, commended his gift, identifying it as possession magic. Right then, it was clarified Oliver's strength lets spirits enter his form when he's peace and open. With possible to channel thousands of sword masters, Oliver's gift brought concern and some reluctant admiration. Right then, Caprice accepted defeat, yet proposed support. Then her experience would now aid Oliver in his fresh role. Right then, among military updates, Azazel delivered tax papers drawing a grave administrative review from leadership. The absurd taxes enraged the lord. Fees for birth, whether even form weight were found. Then, the man jokingly spared the overweight tax, but demanded all other nonsense policies be hurled out. They consented to tour the Deliver jointly, reassessing laws based on actual citizen needs. While inspecting the city, children identified and greeted him kindly, calling him the cool, ancient guy. Townspeople commended their fresh lord, grateful for his reforms and kindness shown toward the people. Cheering broke as the group shared how lifted taxes improved morale and boosted meal production greatly. The lord concerned his rules seemed harsh, but the group reassured him with laughs and gratitude. Abruptly, a commotion shattered out. Someone accused a man of hurting a demon youngster unfairly. The accused claimed innocence, blaming the youngster for entering a mortal village and starting trouble. Then, as tensions arose, the lord demanded fairness, urging everyone to hear the mortal boy's side. Then the demon youngster wept, stating he was bullied solely because of his non-mortal heritage. Overhearing another harsh comment, the lord exhaled, understanding the prejudice raced deeper than anticipated. The man cast a barrier to stop the boy's charge, preventing more violence from escalating. When inquired why demons are distinct, the youngster uneasily replied, pointing merely to their ears. The lord gently pointed out the boy's freckles, revealing how everyone is distinct in appearance. Then the man clarified how judging others by looks causes pain. The boy began to grasp compassion. Right then, calling both demons and humans family, the lord inquired for unity. Right then, the boy nodded, taking. Right then, the children regretted and reconciled swiftly, laughing jointly as if nothing had again happened. The lord's words lingered. At that moment, even the adults silently pondered on his view of shared family. Then, with a steady tone, he cast barrier, creating a dome across the Deliver overhead. The demon observed in wonder, mistaking it for a miracle, though it seemed effortless. Then, he clarified the plan. Connecting barriers would fold the foundation for a mighty unified kingdom. From overhead, linked barriers formed protective domes across key areas, readying for future opportunity. Looking over the guarded lands, they silently admired the beauty of their shared residence. Jointly, the group moved peacefully. Neither sought conflict. The group were merely grateful for the current peace. After a month of hard duties, a kind palm proposed quiet appreciation and thanks. Curious, the lord inquired if breaking the seal made life better for the demon. Right then, though unknown at first, the demon acknowledged change was difficult, but not without a hint of dream. With an uncommon smile, he consented. Things were distant better than 3 centuries ago. The lord teased the demon about grinning, but the flustered denial merely verified it. He declared a celebration, walking off joyfully while the demon silently observed with softened expression. In another place, a frantic man pleaded for aid, calling someone's identity in anguish. The man bowed prior to a girl with injuries, his pride gone, replaced by urgent desperation. Stating her endured dream, he begged for aid now that Jamag had vanished. The girl agreed the mission under her terms, eager to study Shield's mighty barrier magic. Then, while walking through the corridor, the woman was spotted by another woman who identified her instantly. The woman furiously asked the decision, questioning the girl's capabilities and calling her unreliable. Insisting command, the woman proposed her own solution with warriors, criticizing the commander's leadership. Smirking, the girl silently disclosed she had a hidden plan neither of them anticipated. She grinned assuredly, hinting at a concealed weapon mighty enough to bring Shield into chaos. Shield moved steadily through the lively market. Then, merchants thrived, guarded by the mighty barrier he made. Abruptly, a frantic merchant rushed ahead, calling to Shield, his tone sharp across the street. Shield halted Beluga from intervening, concluding to hear the merchant's cause for this abrupt approach. The merchant introduced himself, explaining the man crossed dangerous seas, seeking the vacant guild leadership position. Then, grinning, he unveiled a huge cart of silver money, proving his sincerity and ambition plainly. The merchant secretly grinned, believing Shield was gullible enough to accept any outrageous bribe proposed now. With a peace expression, Shield declined the offer, leaving the merchant startled and entirely speechless. Walking away, Shield believed granting authority invited headaches. Right then, the observing crowd commended his fairness and might. Encircled by admiration, Shield exhaled. Then, he needed a disguise to learn townspeople real thoughts silently. Beluga ready to disguise, right? Then, Shield admired the fake beard, satisfied it flawlessly hid his identity. Right then, Beluga steadily held the disguise. Right then, puzzled townspeople questioned where Shield disappeared so abruptly without notice. Shield waved goodbye, insisting on walking solitary, hoping to blend in and gather honest opinions. Right then, despite the disguise, murmurs spread swiftly. Right then, everyone murmured, recognizing the lord under the obvious costume, then trying to act casual. Shield claimed the man was merely a traveler, his awkward tone betrayed him. At that moment, townspeople commended his rule but chuckled secretly. The group consented his acting was absolutely the worst. Shield uneasily chuckled. Listening to townspeople praise his barrier, trying hard to maintain his clumsy disguise, Beluga neared, scolding him for feigning. Then, the woman questioned if he was even trying to hide. Feigning ignorance, Shield greeted Faye. At that moment, the woman reported exhausting talks with merchants and ridiculed his lame excuses. Faye produced a stained letter, explaining an elf entrusted it as seriously wounded on the road. Right then, Shield held the decided parchment. Understanding it was an urgent message from the elf kingdom, Shield demanded the elf's location. At that moment, Faye clarified a mage captured them, mentioning the identity Olivier. Then, understanding Olivier kidnapped the envoy, Shield concerned about her motives and ready to restoration immediately. Away at the castle, Shield remained solitary by the glass, contemplating the troubling elf message. The man reviewed reports cautiously. Olivier and Capresse still managed the military with dependable precision and order. At that moment, Shield considered the elf conflict's contact. Right then, the man resolved to recheck castle defenses before discussing more. A little demon boy tinkered with rocks, puzzled why he'd been departed nearby solitary. Shield emerged abruptly. Then, the startled boy panicked, calling out uneasily as stones scattered everywhere. Right then, grinning gently, Shield inquired the boy's identity, trying to ease his obvious afraid worry. Daigo admitted the man was too frail, abandoned by Azazel. Feeling ashamed of his shortcomings, Shield examined the stones. At that moment, Daigo clarified he modified magic stones, an unusual method Shield discovered fascinating. Shield inquired Daigo what he intended to create, observing curiously as the boy hesitated uneasily. Daigo acknowledged the man hoped to alter barrier magic himself, though he hadn't inquired permission yet. Flustered, Daigo regretted, tears streaming, convinced the man had overstepped by attempting such an ambitious project. Shield grinned, praising barrier magic's value. Right then, Daigo clarified his dream of sharing it with everyone. Right then, gripping a device, Daigo disclosed his notion modify magic stones to react to mystic strength. Daigo beamed boldly, explaining the stones could create a barrier resisting all magic anywhere needed. Right then, intrigued, Shield inquired Daigo's request. Right then, the boy eagerly requested pieces of his legendary barrier's strength. Then, Shield consented readily. Conjuring a barrier, Daigo cheered, amazed how effortlessly it formed prior to him. Then cautiously, Daigo ready to attach his invention. Then, Shield finally understood Daigo's concealed talents were remarkable. Then, Daigo triumphantly displayed the barrier, now fused flawlessly with his modified magic stone invention. Then, Shield inspected the fused barrier fragment, interest gleaming as the man ready to test its properties. Gripping the device, Shield sensed its strength instantly. It weaponized his barrier flawlessly, exceeding expectations. Right then, he proposed Daigo funds and promised to create additional barriers, discussing protection options with excitement. Daigo wept with gratitude. Right then, Shield patted his face, trusting the boy's resolve and brilliant ideas. Then, as he became to abandon, Shield inquired if Daigo could also aid repair structures. Shield observed Daigo repairing walls right then. He clarified Faye's rampage departed, everything shattered. Praising Daigo's skill. Embarrassed, Daigo maintained it was too much praise. Right then, the man finally sensed certain in himself. Abruptly, dark energy swirled nearby him. Then, Shield called urgently for Daigo to turn nearby. Then, a foot emerged from the darkness. At that moment, Shield sensed overwhelming magic strength unlike anything encountered prior to. A girl with braids emerged grinning. Then, Shield called her Akane, alert of her intentions. Right then, Akane floated down lightly, revealing the woman came because Karasalis ordered her to appear here. The woman chuckled about an elder begging her. Shield suspected the woman had her own concealed agenda. Akane declared the woman loved fighting. Then, without hesitation, she charged, daring Shield to a grave contest. Crashing ahead, the woman vowed to finally break Shield's barrier. Her strength surged like a storm. Right then, Akane descended, disappointed. Right then, the barrier held mighty again. Right then, Shield exhaled as the woman pouted in frustration. Akane complained even her greatest assaults merely made an ordinary barrier magic, feeling annoyed and puzzled. The woman declared she'd been thinking cautiously. Dark magic swirled ominously overhead her lifted palm. A black sphere exploded ahead. Right then, Daigo screamed as Shield objected, concerned about the recent repairs. Akane shouted, it wasn't her issue. Right then, her chaotic magic broke, like a roaring black flame. Right then, steadily, Shield lifted both palms, invoking barrier magic reflective to repel Akane's terrifying strike. Akane crouched thoughtfully, understanding the pondered strike could have been dangerous even for her. The woman gladly waved goodbye to the magic. Shield acknowledged that magic would have been really lethal. Grinning frantically, Akane readied another magic, asking excitedly if this one would be additional interesting. But before the woman could unleash it, her magic was stopped by Daigo's sturdy barrier. Daigo moved ahead, defiantly protecting Shield. The man shouted bravely that he would guard the Lord. Daigo's legs trembled uneasily. Right then, Shield spotted and called his identity, recognizing the boy's concealed courage. Shield greeted Daigo for remaining steady, but gently informed him to step away for security. Daigo maintained it was Shield's barrier, boldly explaining how the man had enhanced it with stones. Akane released electricity. Right then, Daigo's barrier stopped it entirely, proving no magic could breach Shield's greatest magic. Steadily, Shield observed Akane's switch tactics. Right then, the woman employed slime, which bypassed mystic detection cleverly. Akane teased Daigo, laughing about the barrier's flaw. At that moment, Daigo stammered as Akane claimed victory boldly. Then Shield exhaled heavily, understanding he had no selection. Steadily, the man called Akane's notice over. The man proposed a deal: behave and stay. Akane consented, dragging Daigo to play happily. Right then, observing them abandon, Shield managed to smile. The man reminded them to repair all damages. Then, distant overhead, a solitary figure observed the castle roof, quietly observing under the renewed moon. The woman lay resting peacefully. Unaware, a shadowy figure slipped into her chamber with no sound. Dark energy swirled nearby her form, making her gaze open as dread clouded her thoughts. Abrupt grip pressed her down. She questioned if Helena's killer had rebounded again tonight. Uncertainty hit as their palms met uneasily, her tone shaking. Unsure what intention really remained, she identified Miro remaining overhead, her fierce gaze blazing, insisting an explanation for everything.